recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we're taking a look at the Netflix series Stranger Things. This, I think, is maybe one of the rare instances where we talk about a TV miniseries instead of a movie. Can you guys name the other TV miniseries?
We've done some Stephen King stuff.
Yeah. We did It. We did The Stand. Mm-hmm. And The Stand was interesting because we actually did an episode for every episode of The Stand. If we were to do that for Stranger Things, it would be eight weeks that we would be covering Stranger Things, which might well be worth it. What else? Salem's Lot, and I think those are the only miniseries that we've done. But that's actually pretty. Wait, It, Salem's Lot, and The Stand. So those are all three Stephen King miniseries. That's interesting. Okay, bear in mind if you, the listener, haven't seen today's subject, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, the author of The Iron Thane, an epic in the world of Shakespeare's Macbeth, available now in Kindle and paper. With me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
I was told this last weekend that I'm famous on the internet, so I would like to add that I am famous on the internet. Whatever that means.
That's excellent.
Where? Just your Halloween Man, or like
because of the podcast and because of Halloween Man, and this was at Texas Comic-Con.
Also, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and lead bassist of the band Rise from Fire and co-creator of the comic Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humoids. Say hello, Tony. Howdy. And Clockworks actually comes out next month, so literally in like 4 weeks, Clockworks and its
paperback.
Paperback is going to be out, so that's going to be pretty sweet.
In English.
And finally, in English, yes. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
I am not famous on the internet.
You are now.
You might be.
Yeah.
Well, if I am, it's secret.
Do you know, Julia, once... I remember you had a painted belly picture where it was like you had made a little pumpkin out of, and you had posted that.
Well, I was pregnant, very, very pregnant.
You were very pregnant. And you had posted this picture to your blog of like a belly pumpkin thing. Yeah. And then later, somehow, tracing that picture, I don't know how I came across this, but I found that site on a fetish site that was like all into bellies. Are you sure you know?
That's the sort of thing she wants.
Yeah.
I love that you're just now telling me this on the podcast. Wait a minute. Why were you on a fetish site with bellies?
You guys are going to talk after this. After this. I figure there's going to be a separate discussion that has nothing to do with Stranger Things.
Give me a minute there.
Or Stranger something. After this.
Julia, famous on the internet. Giggity, giggity, giggity.
Oh my God, so much wrong with what just happened. So much wrong.
All right.
Jason, you hound.
According to Wikipedia.
It's always the quiet one.
Yeah. No, I mean, here's the way I remember it, and this is the story that I'm going to stick to. I remember that at the time, I was always checking to see who was coming to our websites, because I was always curious, because sometimes, like,
You know what? Just stop. I can already tell this is complete bullshit.
No, this is not.
just go on with Stranger Things before you dig yourself deeper.
No, IP address tracing. That is how I wound up on a fetish site.
All right, whatever. Whatever.
That is not my thing.
Big W right in front of me right now.
This is not my bag, baby. That's okay. According to Wikipedia, Stranger Things is an American supernatural science fiction horror television series created by the Duffer Brothers for Netflix. It was written and directed by Matt and Ross Duffer and executive produced by Sean Levy. The show is set in 1980s Indiana, and it is an homage to 80s pop culture. In it, a young boy vanishes mysteriously, and a telekinetic girl appears who helps the boy's friends in their attempt to find him, while the chief of police starts his own investigation to find the boy. So let's get our opening thoughts. Julia, I haven't had you open anything in like a month, but you are famous on the internet. And so let's go Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll see if I have anything. So opening thoughts, Stranger Things.
Delightful. I think it's really interesting, and I mean, it's both creative but also totally stealing from everything that's ever been good, especially in the 80s. It was a lot of fun. I mean, there was just every episode, at least 3 times, we were like, oh, that's just like Poltergeist, that's just like E.T., that's just like whatever. But it wasn't annoying. It wasn't like they don't have any original ideas. It was just fun. It was like a celebration of all things 80s.
Yeah, very good. Who did I say would go next, Drew or Tony?
Tony.
Okay, Tony, what do you got? I mean, and I have a feeling we run the real danger of everybody going, this was brilliant. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was at first like, can it be this good with all the hype? And I think that it definitely holds up. It does the 80s without irony. It spoke to me in a lot of ways. I grew up in a really rural area. We got moved to Mississippi not by choice. It was not cool to like Dungeons and Dragons. It was not cool to like Doctor Who, which came on PBS, which was already had strikes against it because of that. It's on that channel that tries to get you to learn things. Like all of these things, you stood the risk of getting beat up like the kids in the show. I mean, the odds were less because of how small the school I went to, but it was still similar. And, I got it. And I just think it's done without irony. It doesn't, everything is in the world. I know some people think, oh, well, see, they're just playing on that nostalgia card because they show this or that. But, I mean, that's what people's rooms look like. That's what people who didn't have much money, they look like the Winona Ryder's families. People who had money, they look like the other kids. That's how it is. I even seen, like, and we can get into it later, I've seen a backlash of like, oh, that's not how I grew up in the Midwest, and that's not how this or that was. I'm sorry if that's if it's not an accurate portrayal, but for me, a lot of it felt exactly how it felt. And if that plays up to nostalgia, so be it. But, that's the world that I wanted to, that's the world I grew up in. And I'm glad it didn't have the same monsters. The other monsters, they were people. They weren't these monsters.
I think, you know what, I think we should return, in fact, after we have all the opening thoughts, I think we should return to this concept of the setting, because I think it's a good way to go into it. And you brought up some great things that we can talk about some more. Drew, what about you? Opening thoughts?
Well, this is a perfect storm of I would say, it is mostly 80s, but I would say this covers, like, as far as what it's vibing on, we're talking like a 15-year period of popular culture. I would say it's like all the stuff from Jaws on, and it's like, stuff that kind of filtered into the 80s, like Jaws and Halloween and things like that. So it's a perfect storm of 80s retro in that way. But what I found most fascinating about it is that it starts out as this sort of 80, the stuff you would find in like a video store, like a pastiche of the movies you would find in a video store in the 1980s, right down to like the John Carpenter alike soundtrack.
Yeah.
But so you have these kids, there are effectively, you could see them as the Goonies or the Monster Squad or whatever. You have this monster that looks like it's straight out of The Thing. You have teenagers that look like they should be picked off, seem like they should be picked off by Jason Voorhees at any moment. But because this is a TV show and they have more time to sort of develop these characters, the further we go into it, they develop more depth than the stuff that they are, kind of drawing on. Like the jerkish bullyish boyfriend maybe isn't as big of an asshole as we might think. You know, if Jason were to kill that guy, we'd probably feel kind of bad about it, actually. So that was fascinating to me.
I wouldn't. Even
but they developed
because I'll get to my point when we talk about the end.
We'll get to him.
Yeah.
So, all right. And my only thought, I just want to throw this in, is that I have a keen memory of the time that they're talking about, and I think Tony, you do too, Julia, you do too, Drew, you're a little bit younger than I am. So.
I remember the 80s pretty. It's a different thing because I would be younger, but I mean. I remember the age.
Alive. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I am exactly the age of these young people.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is, so was Winona Ryder, because she was 12 when this movie was going on as well.
Right. 1983. I mean, this is so. You know, I was like 11 and 12. You know, that year, and so you know, the world as seen from an 11-year-old in 1983 that is presented here. That is the way I was seeing the world as well. Although I don't think I was as cool or clever as these kids are, and that's just the way that TV goes. But all right, so I do want to start with this world, the world that they give us in Stranger Things. This it's not just a rural setting. I mean, it totally is. But I was really struck by how perfectly put together it was. You know, like they had set out to go, all right, so what would be, if we're going to do an homage to 80s culture, and I think it's fair to say that was definitely a goal, then, you know, we're going to have a small town. It's going to, you know, there are certain things that it has to have, you know, such as a lake and reservoir, and the town's going to be small enough, you know, that everybody knows one another. And Tony, the thing that you said that I think is so right is the constant presence of wood paneling. You know, certainly in like if in a home where it's not as nice a home, for some reason wood paneling was still very much the thing. And so that's what's all over Winona Ryder's house, and it's also all over some of the offices in this place. And it really marks, you know, it really marks the time. But what else about the setting can we say that you might have thought of when you were watching this?
Well, I mean, I think it's really representational of, for me, you know, like I said, some people seem to complain and that whatever that didn't if it wasn't exactly like the town that you spent next to the secret government facility next to the quarry, then I can't help you much. But as far as, you know, going to school and the people and how the grocery store is and just everything like that, like, I've seen a lot of stuff that gets the 80s, and I don't think they get it quite like this.
Yeah.
I also think
they often get it wrong, don't they? I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen some sites that list, you know, oh, this bicycle wasn't there. And there's ways to nitpick because it's hard to get everything right. But in general, even down to the movies and the era they list, everything feels like that's how I remember it. Whether or not that's a selling point for people who didn't grow up in the 80s, maybe not. But if you liked things like E.T. and the Goonies and just, you know, you name it, Monster Squad, if that's stuff you dig, then this will kind of bring you back to that. But with the, you know, there's a modern, it has all those hallmarks, and it does rip liberally. I mean, shot for shot sometimes. Stuff from those movies, from Firestarter, from, you know, Carrie, from from E.T., you know, you name it. There's videos. You can find all these videos that have exactly where the rips are. But I think it does take that and adds a more modern tone to it that maybe was, you know, it's still got a flavor that has progressed. And I think it's tough to do both. But I was pleasantly surprised at what it does do.
I think it doesn't. I think what I like about like what you're saying about the how it portrays the 80s is that it's not distracting. Like, a lot of times you watch stuff that supposedly takes place in the 80s, and you're like, oh, so much, even if it was actually represented in the 80s, you're like, so much neon and so much big hair and so much, whatever. So none of that is
it
here.
doesn't do. Yeah, what you're saying is like it's easy to fall. What a lot of things do that they like want you to remember, to constantly remember you're in the 80s.
Right.
Like, by the way, wasn't this crazy? Oh, look at the hair. That was so 80s. Whoa.
Yeah. Whoa.
Like, and this
was
none
real.
of that. Like, everything's in there, and it's just the people inhabit that world in the same way that people could inhabit, any fantasy world. That
Drew, you were going to say something for a second there. What?
The thing, kind of going off of what Tony and Julie are saying, the thing is also, like, this isn't the MTV 80s. This is, like, I grew up in a small town, too, and this definitely looks a lot more like what a small town around this point in time would have looked. And also, like, if you were into, like, edgy, like, there's the one character, the older brother in this who's kind of into, like, new wave and punk rock and whatever. And, like, he's the weird kid. Like, if you were into, like, that stuff at that point in time, because my older brother was into that kind of music, and he was considered to be kind of a weirdo.
Yeah.
So,
also, time doesn't work the way that the movies often, a variant on what you guys are saying is that in actuality, if in a small town in 1983, people are wearing hand-me-down clothes sometimes, and that your mom is still wearing the same feathered hair that she had 5 years ago, so to some extent the 70s live on, and the same is true in the 90s. There are still going to be pockets where people are still wearing their Chess King outfits and stuff like that.
Well, geez, by that big hair existed, the big 80s hair persisted for like another 5 years and into the 90s in my hometown.
Oh my God! By the way, the mom. We should talk about the characters. Just kind of go down characters, but this is a weird place to start. But I want to point out the mom of there are two main teen characters here. There's Nancy. Well, a couple of main ones. Nancy and her little brother, Mike. Well, their mom, Mrs. Wheeler, she has the most delightful look. She has feathered hair, and she constantly wears these really sort of prissy blouses that are just like, she has kind of a nice house, and her blouses are probably, I don't know where she's getting them. They're off the rack, of course, but she just looks exactly like, first of all, like Jo Beth Williams in Poltergeist. Like, exactly. Like, I know that they just pinned up Jo Beth Williams' picture and said, okay, I want you to look like that. Go ahead, Tony.
She's a great example of upper middle class. Like, they really, her stuff isn't super fancy, but she's always put together.
Yeah.
Supposedly even for her really terrible husband, who epitomizes the super engineer working dad of the time. Oh, supper ready? Okay. Like, in the same way that you'll see a Ward Cleaver kind of 50s thing, this guy is engineer working dad of the 80s. Like, straight up.
You know who he was like the most? He's like the dad, the stepfather of Winona Ryder in Reality Bites. I don't know if you remember this, but that guy had these, like, thick glasses, and he just sort of sat quietly and didn't ask a question unless he literally needed to know something, like, where is the salt? And, and other than that, and I knew, the funny thing is, growing up, I actually knew people like this, too. It's like the uncle that you guarantee is just going to stand in the corner over there and smoke cigarettes until it's time to go. That's all.
Yeah, and a lot of times, again, like, for better or worse, the mom she's put together because that's what you do, because that's the station you're in. But also, like, she's kind of put together for the dude who kind of doesn't deserve it, but brings home the bacon and, provides this nice 2-story house in the town, because he's got a pretty good job. And, it's not like he's totally disaffected from the family. You know, he cares about things when he cares about things, and he, you know, eventually does. But again, there's the archetype, but there's the archetype for a reason, because I think if you grew up in the 80s in a town big enough, or you went places, there was a dad. That was a dad you would encounter. Like, hands down.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's I just was thinking about when we were doing the retrospective on the Stepford Wives, remember how the dads would just sort of had a bus that they literally would take into the city every day to go to their sweet jobs, you know, and come back to their big houses. And you I don't remember if we ever see what this guy actually does for a living. One presumes that.
I keep going back to it, and I mentioned a couple times. I want to say they said something about him being an engineer, but I'd have to, like.
I have no doubt, you know. But he doesn't seem to work at the. He doesn't work at the lab, so we don't know what really he's up to. I'm not saying he's up to anything bad. I'm just saying that you know. All we really need to know about him is exactly as you said it. He's just kind of a out of touch father, or at least out of touch to the extent that he's not really directly involved in the plot here. But as you pointed out, he is human, and so this is an example, and there will be others where there's a trope that the show could be hitting, and then it veers a little bit out of the way just to give you some kind of pleasant surprises. Let's actually take it from the top. The main characters, besides some of the ones that we already mentioned, so Winona Ryder, I think, is the star that everybody has been talking about ever since this thing came out on Netflix. People have been talking about Winona Ryder as though she has been dead and risen from the grave to play this part. And she plays Joyce. She plays the mom of the catalyst of the plot, which is Will, the boy who disappears one night, possibly attacked by an alien. And what are our emotions when we're encountering Winona Ryder in this show?
To me, she's delightfully unhinged. Like, she starts, you know, she's definitely hasn't been the best mom, and we quickly discovered that. But she's also a working mom who has hooked up at some point with the not best dad either.
What do you mean she hasn't been the best mom? Just cause
I like her.
I think she's okay.
No, I think she admits, I've neglected my kids because I've had to work. She is, you know, she's made mistakes because she was married to the jerk. Like, she freely gives up all the information that says, hey, you know, she cares.
Your point is she's not perfect, right?
She's not. I mean, she's not beating her kids or anything like that, but she's definitely, like, because of circumstances, has been, you know, when she had a breakdown before, or has, you know, had problems, stuff like that. But
notice how people
she deeply cares for her family, and especially when things go really, really wrong.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was thinking about, there's a point where she starts to get her plan together to communicate. You know, she's experimenting with, since her son appears to have maybe slipped into some other part of reality so that he might be able to communicate with her, and so she goes to her workplace, which is this discount store. She works at a discount store, and she goes there, and she needs to borrow money and also buy some stuff, and her boss, who she's worked for a long time, really seems to distrust her. And I was thinking, this is a really good look at this sort of knee-jerk, prejudicial distrust that people have for the working poor. You know, that you have this notion that somehow, because this woman is not very wealthy, that she doesn't have the sense to know not to buy Christmas lights without some really good reason. And she has to actually stand up for herself and said, look, man, I've worked for you for a decade. I'm a good employee. Please just trust me and give me my Christmas lights and also some Camels. And that she's, you know, but that I just thought I thought this kind of look at class was something that, no matter how wonderful Spielberg is, is something that Spielberg was very silent on. I mean, he didn't touch this stuff at all. You know, the parents in Poltergeist.
Well, I think that that's imported from another major influence in this, which is Stephen King.
Yeah. Well said, Drew. What are the So I'm sorry, Joy. Were you going to say something?
Well, I mean, first of all, back on the Winona Ryder thing. I was so impressed with her acting. I mean, I don't think I've said this in quite a few episodes, but as a mom,
right,
I
like
really identified with that, like just that terror, and I just felt like I could feel that she was feeling that, when her son goes missing and she doesn't know, and then people don't believe her about things, and she's like, I just really believed it. I really believed that she was going through all those emotions and feeling that craziness. So that was great. And then what was the question you just asked, or what were you about to get into?
Well,
the other thing was that I said earlier, like the ET. There's so much ET in this. In fact, Jason, you pointed out that that the girl who is, I guess, sort of the alien in this, she's the one with the superpowers, they actually dress her up in his sister's dress and a blonde wig, just like E.T.
Just like E.T.
And of course they have the bicycles, and then they have the, all that. So
yeah. We'll get to 11 in a bit. I agreed. I loved Winona Ryder. I think a lot of people haven't necessarily seen her in a lot of things. Like they saw her in Star Trek, but I think it's very possible that people saw her in Star Trek without even realizing that was her. But here, since she's such a main character of this show, I think people are suddenly confronted with the fact that Winona Ryder is now in her mid to late 40s, and so are a lot of us. And it's a stunning.
But she looks great.
Oh no!
Yeah, she's exactly our age. She's actually 45.
No doubt, she looks great. I mean, I absolutely think she looks fabulous. But it is a shock, I think, to suddenly go, wait a minute, Leilani from Reality Bites is now in her mid-40s, And Generation X is such a small generation that it's not really representative of very many people in this country. The boom was enormous, and the millennials are nearly as big as the baby boom. Generation
They're bigger,
X,
actually.
Is it? Are they bigger? Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And I don't know really what a millennial watching this show gets out of it. I'm sure they enjoy it, but I don't know for sure if they know all the references or if it means jack for them.
I think the ones born in the 90s probably do, because this stuff, the pop culture that they're riffing on, stuck around a lot longer than pop culture prior to it because of video stores. So I think, I don't know about the kids, maybe born in the late 90s, early aughts, but certainly kids that were born in the late 80s and early 90s and grew up while there was still this video store culture probably are aware of E.T. and The Thing. And these are movies that are still, when I talk to kids who are in their 20s, these are movies that still get mentioned. So I think at least some of the more savvy youngsters, you take out my full teeth to talk about this.
Well, there's HBO and there's stuff like that. So yes, Goonies is going to be playing. But I think, let's put it this way: it plays both ways. It plays a way where you're watching it and you're going, oh wow, that shot where that guy is running towards the shed up against the trees looks just like when Elliot ran towards the shed up against the trees in Alien. And that shot where the van flips through the air is just like the shot where the bicycle goes in the air in E.T. Did I say Alien? I mean E.T. But you can do that stuff. You could do a whole viewing doing that stuff. But this is really good. This show is very good, and so you could watch it and just be into the story and probably not get any of that stuff.
It's funny, E.T. is not a movie I really revisit that often. So, I barely thought about E.T. I was thinking about, a lot of the other stuff, and I also kept thinking that this is sort of like watching one of those Stephen King miniseries that we talked about, but without the baggage of it actually being Stephen King.
Yeah, they don't have to cut out all the extra all the extra stuff. Instead, they just build as much as they have. Although I would say they've created so much story here that by the time you get to the end, there are a hell of a lot of plot threads that you could probably get another couple episodes out of. I mean, easily. You could do a Stephen King-sized novel out of all the characters and stories. In fact,
unless
well.
Although there's that other looming influence of John Carpenter, which likes to leave loose ends.
Sure.
Well, I still wish that we could get Stephen King to pen a Dan O'Bannon-style adaptation of this. That would be my ultimate, because I think we stated before, like, at the time, those novels, before you could just watch anything at any time, I had a lot of novel adaptations of things because you could reread them and then basically relive the movie. But a lot of times they would, since they were part of the script and they had to make it flow, you got A, the basically director's cut version of the script, and B, you got a little bit more insight into things because they talked to the people making it. So you got these kind of fleshed out, novel adaptations. I wish Stephen King, they would tap him to do that. That would be amazing.
It would really be interesting to know what Stephen King or Spielberg or Carpenter, it would be interesting to know if they found this show flattering or if they were kind of like, oh man, they're jacking my my
Stephen
shtick.
King tweeted or something or posted on Facebook, can't remember, but basically he dug it.
Yeah.
Like he's come out and said, hey, this is cool.
One thing that I have to say about, watching I want to talk about the boys next, the team. Watching these boys in their childhood, what you're reminded of, and this is not true for the millennials, and it's kind of a shame, is that theirs is the last generation that will really not have that much to watch in their living room. That basically most of their activity and most of their recreation will involve using their imagination, playing board games, and a lot of like really tactile stuff.
And Dungeons and motherfucking Dragons.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
I play D&D. I'm pretty sure I get the sense that Tony did, and I loved all the D&D references in this.
Oh, it is
amazing.
It's fabulous.
Another thing that it borrows from a lot is Close Encounters, and I was just thinking we need to do Close Encounters.
Yeah, we could probably, if we can make. We've been able to make a few science fiction things work. I mean, Mars Needs Women. We managed to do that.
We could just do scary Spielberg.
Scary Spielberg. Or
Well,
scary,
he's made easy. You could do Duel. You could do Close Encounters. You could do.
I think it would be cool to do
my dad was recommending 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Duel is a scary freaking movie, man.
It would be interesting to do a like some of the bad homages that were around at the time. I remember when E.T. came out, there were a bunch of like rip-off movies. Some of them like extraordinarily grody movie.
Please don't make me sit there. Don't make me sit through Mac and Me. That's all I ask of you.
Oh no.
Drew has said, let's watch Mac and Me.
Good God.
A lot of Alien, a lot of Stand By Me. What else? I'll try this before we leave our topics about that.
Well, yeah, the Stand By Me stuff definitely you can see when the group are the young boys who are
the Goonies too.
Yeah, in fact, we should talk about who they are. So the boys are Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. They are these three boys. There's actually four, but one of them gets abducted earlier, and that sets off the plot.
Winona Ryder's son.
Yeah, Winona Ryder's son is the one who's stolen. Mike is the one who is sort of the leader, and we see them talking to one another in a kind of code that is lifted from all of their movies. When they talk about betrayal or not seeing how something is going to take a sudden wrong turn, the word for that is from The Empire Strikes Back. What is it?
Landoing.
Yeah,
Lando.
That's awesome.
Lando. And I totally identified with that. That Empire Strikes Back would be a profoundly important movie to them at this point. I don't know, what year did Evil Dead come out? Evil Dead was in fact out when this movie?
Oh yeah, Evil Dead I think was 1981 or 82.
All right, so the kids have an Evil Dead poster. I was actually surprised by that because Evil Dead's pretty darn intense.
Isn't that the older brother actually that has it?
Yeah, it is the older brother, so that would make sense.
Well, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty rough.
Yeah, because she tells him to take it down.
The ultimate experience in grueling horror, man.
Yeah, that's a good poster. I used to have that poster. So yeah, into their lives though. At the same point where they're on the same evening that their friend Will is taken away, into their lives comes, just like E.T. coming out of the woods, comes this mysterious girl called 11, and I don't want to hear myself jabber about this. Julia, do you want to talk about how? Or go ahead, Tony.
One thing also that's really cool about not just it takes into account not just the movies of the time, but there were a lot of really cool young adult novels that had to deal with awkwardness of being a teen, which always works, but also this, hey, maybe you're chosen, maybe you have superpowers, or all these things, you know, or even X-Men if you associated with Kitty Pryde at the time. I think there's one, A Girl with a Silver Eyes was a great one, but it dealt with all of these, let's escape from this lab, or this person I met has done this. You know, there's what was the one about cloning? Now I have to look that up.
Well,
Total Recall? Or?
Well, there was definitely all that stuff like Escape from Witch Mountain and things like that. Where
Yeah. But there were a lot of novels too, young adult novels, and this tapped directly into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this notion of a gang who are able to see conspiracies, especially government conspiracies.
They name drop, you know, X-Men and Fantastic Four a couple of times in this, and I'm thinking about like the time period this would have been like, you know, the prime eras of like Claremont and Byrne at this point. So like, I think, you know, Tony mentioning X-Men, that's a pretty astute observation. I think it's more subtle than the other things, but I do think they were probably thinking about like the X-Men comics of the time period, but also obviously Firestarter too.
Good. Yeah. I have to say I haven't seen Firestarter since the 80s. Although, let me just sidebar here for a moment. The title treatment of this series is just a delight. I mean, it sends a chill down my spine when I see that neon at the beginning, which I don't know if it's computer generated neon or if they really built a neon title, but it looks so great. And then all those, you know, titles for each chapter, it's in that cool Stephen King font from about the mid 80s, so that every time one of these chapters opens up, you really feel like you're turning the page in a Stephen King paperback. It blows my mind because they didn't have to do stuff like that. You know, there's all the times when we watch something and we go, gosh, don't you wish they had thought to do this or that thing? And of course they don't, and so we're just going, wow, that was an opportunity. These guys don't miss those opportunities, and it's really impressive. I have to say, I'm really impressed about them. All right.
Okay, so you were asking about 11. So, this poor young girl, and I was about to get immediately sidetracked to the story of her origin story, but
you can do it however you want.
I'll back up. So
give like a 10-second version of her, however you want to do it. Go ahead.
Right. Well, anyway, so this young girl has been experimented on by Matthew Modine and others, and because she has special abilities, and so about exactly the time that Will goes missing, she appears in the woods, and the boys, you know, kind of get to know her, and they sort of keep her, they shelter her so that nobody can find her, because they realize as soon as she starts speaking, which is not right away because she's very scared to speak, I guess, she immediately says that the bad men are looking for her, so they hide her, and she's called 11. She has a tattoo, and they call her Elle for short. So she refers to Matthew Modine as Papa, but he clearly tortures her, like he's trying to get her to become, I guess, the perfect, efficient killing machine. And so he only gives her love and affection when she kills, and she won't kill a cat, so they throw her into solitary, into this dark cell on the floor. But then this time, rather than let the door close on her, she kills these two guys that threw her in there, and so then Matthew Modine picks her up and gives her kisses and hugs. And
right.
It's clear that
that's
she's
the
like,
plot
oh, that's
stuff,
my
but
love.
tell me the psychological meaning of all that.
And so,
I want to get into this character. Like, what is the function of this character in this?
She's fighting this programming. You know, she is a trained soldier basically, but she's fighting this programming because she wants to be, you know, kind and good. So she has opened. Okay, so part of what she does is that she can access this upside down world is what we're dealing with here. And there's like a monster in it. But she's able to go to access it and get in there. But she kind of lets it loose. She kind of opens the portal. What do they call it on Buffy? The Hellmouth.
Right.
You know, she kind of opens the Hellmouth now, and now that's how Will gets taken, and also a teenager who meets a worse fate than Will, named Barb. And
can I just ask though, when the first thing that Mike starts doing though is protecting Elle, this little girl, in the same way that Elliot protected E.T. He's hiding Elle in his sort of basement room. He's built a little fort for her.
Right.
And there's something delightful to me.
And he loves her, and he falls in love with her.
He loves her, but even before we get to that, to me there's something delightful in the kind of deserved rebellion that was attendant to all of these Spielbergian kind of movies at the time. That there were things that adult people simply didn't understand, and if you needed to do something super important, then you probably needed to really do some sneaky shit because your parents were not going to be helpful.
You know, Jason, I have to say, I am surprised to hear you, you know, sort of speaking of this in such positive tone, since every time we've done one of those movies, you get very frustrated with the children protagonists.
Yeah, I do. I'm not.
And it seems I'm not knocking that. I mean, that's just personal taste. But it seems like this time around, you enjoyed this, and I want to know what was different about this, which is essentially riffing on those movies, such as Goonies, which you have said you don't particularly care for.
I never liked Goonies. I do definitely like E.T. So maybe I don't know. Maybe it's I don't have a good. That's a really good question. I don't know what the answer to that is.
I would like to know what's different because it's fascinating to me.
Right. With Elliot, there's always this feeling that is really vital that he save this alien, and everybody who may be good-hearted is nevertheless going to screw it up if they find out. So he absolutely, so there's just this kind of nobility that Elliot has because he knows for certain. And by the way, the world is manipulated so that Elliot is correct. But he knows for certain that he must hide this alien from the government and from the parents and all that stuff. And it's true. I mean, I live in a world where I'm not sure that's true because I actually have kids, and I actually do believe that I know better than them what's good for them. But Steven Spielberg says, no, Mom and Dad, you're wrong. They actually have a better understanding of what's going on in their lives. I don't know, but why don't I like Goonies? I didn't like Goonies just because I was.
Well, no. I know why you don't like Goonies. I just want to know why this is different than that. You know, what about this group?
You remember
of
I
kids
also liked.
Where it was okay?
I loved It.
And you liked Stand By Me.
Yeah, I like
That's
Stand
true.
By Me.
And well, It, and I feel like this. They're doing a new version of It. I feel like this.
Which is
this
going to
show
star the guy who plays Mike, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Well, this show immediately makes that movie has a tough act to follow in this because this does in a lot of ways borrow liberally from It in as much as anything else it riffs on.
Yeah, you asked a really, really good question, and that definitely deserves some more thinking about. Let's talk about the teenagers, because I want to be able to like hit these different characters. All right, the two, there's a really complicated relationship going on here between what is the name of
it's a love triangle
brother? Yeah, I guess it's a love triangle. So Jonathan Byers is the slightly, I don't even know how to put him. He's
kind of goth. He's kind of
no, he's not goth.
Well,
no,
he's more
not.
like he's more like a freak
new
in a way. No, he's not new wave.
You don't think?
No.
He likes some new wave though. He likes.
He does. Yeah, no, he likes the new wave.
But he likes rock too, because there's like rock stuff and there's Clash.
He's kind of a freak, honestly, except for he doesn't.
Yeah, he's just a dude who doesn't fit in. You know, and again, this goes back to stuff that it touches. If you look at his, for example, his stereo setup and the tapes he has, and how many of the tapes are recorded and how many are actual tapes, and when you grow up with not much money, like getting a new tape at the time, where music was not ubiquitous, where you had to record it or wait for your favorite song, you had to call in. Maybe they would play your song you liked. If you didn't like what was on the radio, you really had to dig deeper. And if you didn't like what was popular, you were a super freak. There wasn't a legion of forums that you could go to and go, hey, I like this obscure band, and people go, oh, I love that obscure band too.
I love the Violent Femmes.
You were like, that was not good. It was not cool. It put you in the zone that he's in. You like that weird music. You like those weird shows. You like those weird games. Being poor and being weird, double crappy.
Yeah.
And I can attest to this.
Right.
And then, so each tape, the fact he has this Clash tape and he shares it with his younger brother, that was a thing. Like, hey, check this out. When you found somebody that's why there's this, like, brotherhood of metal and blah, blah, blah. When you found somebody that liked the weird crap you liked, there was like an island. It was like ants, like fire ants, where they form a island and float to have them all survive. You clung to that because there was nothing to affirm that anybody else anywhere knew what the hell that was. You knew objectively, of course, but so all of that stuff, like he's sharing this with his brother, who he can trust. That these things are sacred, and that's also
that's literally how I got into my favorite band.
Yeah,
like
and
when you're
it ties
describing
through
that.
with that is the lifeline. That's one of the few lifelines that keeps him alive in the other realm. Him singing in the Clash and like comforting himself, and how that is the through line for a huge chunk of the episode. That stuff. That's, again, when people go, oh, it's just nostalgia. No, it's nostalgia, but it's also, if you grew up, it means something to you.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that having it speak to you, if you're going to say, like, oh, well, then why do you like anything, or why do you like the favorite bands, and why, once you reach a certain age, you kind of, I'm one of the few people, I think, who I know, and a couple of people have told me this, that, I'll find new bands all the time, and a couple of them leap into your top 10. But in general, most people go, like, that's why, up until, again, the internet age, there was an oldies station. And your dad or your uncle or maybe your grandparents listened to that music, and maybe that was super oldies, or maybe that was, if it was your dad, maybe it was like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. The Beatles were mostly on those channels. And
if you listen to the radio now, you get classic rock and you get 80s music.
You can, but it's not it's definitely not the same. But again, like, it doesn't matter because you can get that anywhere now.
Yeah.
I also love
you can Spotify an oldies, like a classic rock station, and you won't have to listen to anything else. Whereas at the time, you got what the radio gave you unless you had a tape deck or some freedom that allowed you to play what you wanted in your car.
Right.
Yeah, I remember. Go go ahead, Drew. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted, before we get off the music thing, like, Tony was talking about how people, referring to, like, just the use of the Clash as nostalgia, and, like, him, making, like, the mixtapes and everything. Like, that was one of the, like, I just said that was one of the most real things about this, because, like, my older brother, it was very responsible for, like, a lot of the music that I started to get into. And, a lot of it was shared just like that. So people saying that's just nostalgia is BS. Like, that happens,
Oh, yeah.
And
why do I like metal? My stepbrother.
Yeah.
I
Like,
can't imagine
straight up,
anybody.
like,
Yeah.
I did not listen to metal. We started hanging out more and more. He moved in with us. And now, I'm turning him on to bands.
Are they saying
like,
that the kid would not? Are they saying that the kid would not listen to this music because it's unlikely he would have gotten it from his brother?
No. I'm just saying that as a
no, not you.
people have a backlash for
what is
it's
the
just
thing that
nostalgia.
people
They haven't. No, sorry, Jason. No, well, I'm not saying that saying that's not true. What I'm saying is people who riff on this show as it's just 80s nostalgia drivel and no one will get it.
Yeah.
I think they're missing some of the emotional touchstones that some of the things may.
Yeah. It's like saying Mad Men is just nostalgia.
That's a good point. I liked what you said about that lifeline. And it's funny, that image you brought up of the island of red ants is exactly the image of the bundle of lights that Winona Ryder holds in her hands to talk to the world. It's kind of funny.
I've been trying to figure out, and this is a dumb thing, but I've been trying to figure out how he made the lights turn on and off.
I mean, we don't have chapters that cut to him in the
Yeah,
other
that's
world.
what I'm saying. Because when we see them wandering around in that world, because they do, eventually, Winona Ryder does end up getting over there and walking around in it, the lights go on as they're walking up and down the...
Well, that's her first hour there. Maybe because Will was there for several days, he kind of
figures out how to manipulate stuff.
Well, the two worlds bleed into each other too. I mean, it's essentially like a hell version of their town. And
right.
What
I'm saying is, if she says blink once for yes and twice for no, or spell words or whatever, how is he doing the light thing? I mean, what does he do? I don't. And like I said, we don't know because we don't see it. But that's what I just was trying to embed in my head what he would have to do on the other side to make it light up on her side.
I mean,
my guess is, I think the conceit is more of that realm you control in the same way that you could control electromagnetism. Also, we get kind of, maybe he is one of these kids who's a little bit special, like a little bit. The reason the monster kind of finds him is there's something different about him. Not to the level that 11 is, of course, but I got the impression, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but there are things that are said and kind of little bits here and there. He's super smart, blah, 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 that there's something about him that makes him a target firsthand that also tie into,
and helps him survive.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly special by the end.
When he's like stuck in Silent Hill or whatever the hell it is, he's in his like Castle Byers, and he seems to be able to use that as a construct to defend himself. It doesn't last forever.
Also, why does the monster just basically eat Barb and, it impregnates him with the slugs from Night of the Creeps?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
but I got the impression that it's the same thing. He did the same thing to Barb as he did to Will. It just he didn't find Will fast enough right away. But I think when they find Will, they pull that snake out of him. I think that's the same thing that killed Barb, because she had one of those things sticking out of her mouth.
Yeah, I think so as well.
It's pretty awful.
Well, the monster's really
it eats some things and aliens other people.
Yeah, he ate the crap out of that guy that went in after it and from the lab.
Well, just like Alien did. Remember how Dallas is pinned to the wall and is like up there in an alien in a spider cocoon, but she was just like eating other members of the ship.
Maybe there's some that they're like, oh, this will taste better if it's sits.
Well, I mean, some have to be impregnated and some have to. It's God knows how the instinct kicks in with the alien, but this is pretty much a cousin to that for sure.
Well, it's like the Alien and the Thing from the John Carpenter Thing had a baby together.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, and the Thing is actually there's posters of the Thing in there too.
Oh yeah, no, that one shows up a lot. This whole business of the government agents with their hoods and their flamethrowers and their all that crap, that is like Close Encounters, but also to me it's Stephen King kind of stuff, like paranoid Stephen King. That you see in a lot of.
I also think about the Crazies, the George Romero movie. Like that makes me think about that too.
I've never seen the Crazies. So
it's good, and actually, I remember liking the remake of all things.
The remake of that is solid.
That can go up there with the. Hey, yeah, that remake was actually I enjoyed that.
It looked really unnerving. I mean, this idea that people. I mean, I want to see it. I just haven't gotten around to it. This idea that people around you can be at a baseball game and suddenly somebody can just start attacking everybody else. That can really flip people out. Gosh, what else should we discuss? I mean, there's so much here.
Well, I started to talk about the origin story of 11, and I never did go back to that. So they want to, in order to try to find Will, once Winona Ryder finds out that 11 exists, actually, yeah. Wait, is that right? I think is it after she finds out that she exists? Yeah, I guess it's after. I don't know. Well, anyway, the point is somehow they connect that this mom.
The whole show unravels this mystery. But yeah, you can give us what.
Well, somehow they figure out that this woman lost her daughter a long time ago, and there was weird circumstances. So they go looking for her, but she's catatonic and really can't communicate very much. But the sister or whoever it is that's caregiving her, it tells them that, well, she's kind of a, I don't know, I didn't like this character very much. But anyway, she's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. She supposedly lost her daughter and made all this fuss about her daughter, but really she miscarried her in the third trimester, which, of course, me being a, person who's been pregnant and knows about stuff, I'm like, that's not a miscarriage, it's a stillbirth. But whatever. Anyway, she's like, she lost the baby in third trimester, and so she doesn't even have a kid, so I don't know what she's talking about.
But that's all bullshit anyway, isn't it?
But anyway, but she says, but she just goes on and on talking about how, or used to before she was catatonic, about how, her daughter had special abilities because when she was pregnant, she would know she was pregnant, and she did all of this sensory deprivation, experimental hippie stuff. And so now she believes that her daughter has all these powers, and whatever. And I'm like, how does she know that? Like, how does a mom know that? Did she have like some kind of psychic connection with her? Because if she's been missing since she was a baby, how does she ever know that? Anyway, but that was the
I think it's entirely possible that they've done a Lady on the Train with her, where they took the baby away or the child away, and then they said, "Oh, you never had a child. No, that was all in your mind. You had a
wow, that's pretty creepy."
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
there's not above anything creepy. That's
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's true, and that would make sense because look, she's got mobiles hung up, and
yeah, exactly. And it's all very strange. And so, but the thing is that she had the sensory deprivation.
Or is it mobile? How do you?
It's mobile. Mobile when it's that. Mobile is Mobile, Alabama.
Oh.
And so I think, but I'm sure people say Mobile for that.
What you said makes much more sense. Go ahead.
But anyway, I was just going to say about the sensory deprivation thing is that interestingly, that's what they end up using then to get 11 to go into the upside down world.
Yeah. And
both in the lab that Matthew Modine runs, and then also at the high school where they create one by calling that. This is the funny part where they decide that they need to create a sensory deprivation chamber because 11 knows she'll be able to find Will if that happens. And so she offers to go in. So they call their science teacher who's on a hot date, and they say, hey, remember how you said we could ask you any questions and it was like good to be curious? Well, we were wondering how to make a sensory deprivation chamber. And he goes, can we talk about this on Monday? Because I'm kind of trying to get late here. He doesn't actually say that, but that's what he's thinking. And and they're like, oh, come on, you said that we should, be curious and blah, blah, whatever. So they convince him because he's just trying to get him off the phone and to tell them how to make a sensory deprivation chamber, which just cracked me up. And so they get like this little kid pool and fill it with all the de-icing salt that the high school has, and then they create this chamber for her, and she goes and finds and find the world.
Yeah.
Something else that's also great that is just good storytelling that if you can relate to or not, but I think the building of the characters of the kids, the boys, and all of that teen stuff of like the one, Lucas he is really actually kind of jealous. Like, hey, we were friends, and then our friend's in trouble, but you're Landoing us because you're too worried about girls,
Yeah.
And all of that stuff that starts to, that's part of like the difference between as you come of age, you still may have best friends, but you may not. Like if you, hey, we don't hang out, as much. Well, yeah, I discovered girls, or that kind of all that stuff that pushes you apart, and or the circumstances that keep you together or bring you back together, because of the friendships that you have. I thought it was a really great, touching moment. Also, when they're riding, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know he's your best friend." He goes, "No, you're all my best friends."
Yeah.
And that kind of insecurity of the hierarchy of friendships as a teenager, or budding teenager, and then also the solidification or splitting of all that. Like, they deal with a lot of that, and it's smart stuff, and it has nothing to do with whether it's in the 80s, 90s, or even in the future.
Yeah.
And I think some of that even doesn't, like, I've seen a lot of new young adult fiction movies and read a few books, but I think Harry Potter does it pretty well, but I've seen a bunch of others where it's just the superficial action parts, and I think it's missing some of this touchstone elements that are in this series that I think are great. And again, pardon me, but that's another reason why I wish there was an adaptation too. So I could reread this. So, I can binge watch this any time, right? But I kind of want to relive it through the written word as well.
Well, more than Stephen King could do that. I mean, those.
Oh yeah, he does great.
You've got a million of your Alan Dean Fosters and of the world who are perfectly happy to churn out, even today, to churn out novels based. But you could go deeper. And look how they've taken cliched characters we've seen before. This character, Mr. Clark, is an homage to like the science teacher in the Gremlins.
Oh yeah. Although I do wish the terrible people, the terrible kids would maybe have gotten eaten. But again, that's how life works. Like, those people grow up, and they grow up often to be, they don't learn a lesson, and they grow up to be just really terrible people in general.
That's
and
true. The funny thing
survive,
is, though,
they live a long time as terrible people.
Yeah.
All the the terrible and maybe look, they're going to do another season of this, so they may still end the way they would actually end if this was an 80s movie instead of a miniseries in the early 21st century. But it is true. Like the popular clique kids who Nancy hangs out with, all of them would have been killed by the monster if this was an actual 80s horror film. Like none of them would have survived. So it is interesting to think about how they have turned that on its head. So like it's not a carbon copy of the stuff that influences it.
Yeah. And actually,
no, it's not.
Was it Steve, the love interest? I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, that's right. Steve is the boyfriend of Nancy. And
he was like, has about 5 minutes of being a total jerk, but then redeems himself pretty quickly.
Well, we should
that's
talk
what
about
the thing
him.
is. That came out to me. That was one of the few things that came out of left field. Like his.
Yeah.
Oh wait, and I guess you've got movies where that happens. Several teen movies, but that was the one where I was like, I kind of wasn't expecting it, but I also was less believable. However, the one thing I will believe, and I thought this before I saw the very end, is I instantly was like, she's going to go back to that dude.
Yes.
Because that is how life works.
Well, also,
like,
I don't think she's actually into the Byers kid.
Well, they were. No. In many shows and many novels, etc. He's the guy. You know what? He's the poor kid with the heart of gold. Maybe I should. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should go out with him because we bonded together. We were both in the. This would work out. There's several, cases where this will work out. But as it stands, it does work out. Steve wasn't so bad after all. Now they totally do redeem him in a way. But in general, I was like, man, that is not going to work out. She is going to go back with Steve. And in the real world, he might even be still kind of jerky.
Still a jerk.
But that's
But this is also defined.
To me, that's all real.
Because he's not as much of a jerk as he would be in 1980.
Well, and God, I'm blanking. The older Byers. What is his name?
Well, gosh, it's not Mike. It's not Will. It's I feel terrible.
Anyway, the older brother, the older Byers, the other part of this love triangle. He is what? Jonathan. He is like him taking the pictures of them, even though he means it innocently enough. That is a little creepy. And if that was my girlfriend, if that was my girlfriend, I probably would react
the
same way as Steve.
When they like, and this is what's complicated about that friend. So yeah, Jonathan is out there investigating the stuff he's investigating, but he sees them having their party. And him stopping and taking photographs of them is not appropriate, okay? Now, I'm not saying...
Especially when she's taking off her top.
So it's a weird temptation, and he gives into that temptation, and he does something not appropriate. This is already weirder than any 80s story ever would have gotten, because generally good guys are good guys and bad guys are bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
But he does this thing that's wrong, and then he gets caught.
Mm-hmm.
And when
because he's stupid enough to develop at the high school when there's people around. I mean, I don't know how else he would have developed them because he didn't have a dark room, but still. So
Steve punishes him like as though Steve is like the law on this campus. But to be honest with you, this guy's. Let's put it this way: if this is a traumatic event for this kid, he ain't never going to do anything like that again. This is
maybe not. I mean, it depends on.
Well, I think like my point being is like you're a teenager, you're a ball of raging hormones, you're short-tempered. Like he smashes, his camera. But I would probably, again, if that was my girlfriend, I'd probably react very much the same way. I'm not saying it's right, but that's filtered through an adult lens, not a teenager
I'm going farther
lens.
than you are. I'm saying it is right. I'm saying that Steve is basically protecting the community and saying it's not appropriate for you to be taking pictures with your camera, and to punish you, I'm going to break your camera. It
does seem like an appropriate punishment.
I gotta say, like, I do like Nancy and Jonathan. It's more interesting to me that she doesn't end up just being the wish fulfillment girlfriend. She's a fully realized. Yeah. It's funny, like Tony was talking about like like people attacking this for various reasons. Like the fact that they don't reduce her to just being a damsel or in distress or a prize for the two guys to fight over. Like, she has this friendship with Jonathan, and I like them better as friends because it doesn't. She just doesn't end up being a trophy.
Get together, but I'm with you. Did you hear the dialogue? Really great piece of dialogue where she goes, "What were you thinking when you took my picture?" And he goes, "It seemed like you were trying to pretend to be something you're not." And she goes, "What a bunch of bullshit."
Yeah, totally.
And I thought that was really great.
And that's a great trope-busting moment because if in the 80s, if this was an actual 80s movie, they would have revealed something about her character, and that's when they would have started their romance.
I know. That's what I wish would have happened in Pretty in Pink when, at the end, when Blaine is like, "I believed in you, you just didn't believe in me." It would have been so nice to have her go, "What a load of bullshit."
Right.
Although she is pretty dumb for climbing into the tree. That I was like, okay, you're not, come on. That was definitely horror movie logic at its finest. But again, like the other thing that makes them such just raging jerks is it's Stephen King plays with this a lot, but the fact that his family is so poor, when they smash his camera, they don't just smash a camera he has. They smash one of the very few things he has at all that makes him a value of anything that he has that, and he can when things are craptastic at the house, he has that, and they take that from him, and that is why jackasses like that are terrible, terrible people. Yeah. And they have and to them, they could go buy a camera any time. Yeah. Like, they could buy 5 of them, Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point. That's a thing. That's what's kept, you get the impression that's one of the things that's kept him going after the divorce, after he doesn't see his mom, he's forced to take care of his brother. All of these things. He's got that until, admittedly, is creepy about taking her picture. But in general, like, that's a touchstone. And when, a bully smashes that thing that you have, that's the last thing you have, that's a big deal. No, I agree. And they're suitably terrible people. And they grew up I wouldn't have done suitably terrible people. No, I'm just saying that it's more complicated than it normally is. I think and that's what's great about it. Like, that's what's great about a good storytelling. They could have made them they're monstrous in the reality of that situation and that bullying. Yeah. They're not, they didn't go out after that and just start kicking puppies. Like, although this is the thing they do. I like the 7th or 8th episode they do, the when they're like painting Slud on the. Yeah, but that's jerks. That's also Steve's 2 friends who are more cartoon. They are a lot more cartoonish. Like, those 2 are straight out of a Friday the 13th movie. Like they are machete fodder. They just are in the wrong setting. Yeah, that's totally. You're totally right. They just deserve, honestly. You're just like, oh, you guys, they had no humanity. They are cartoons. You really wish they would get eaten by the orchid monster, and the Demogorgon. Yes. Yeah. It's funny how there are several sets of bullies in this thing, by the way, because you've got the older bullies who are dealing with Jonathan, and then you've got these younger like bullies, like a Christmas Story style bullies, who are always taunting our friends, the D&D players. I wish we had a shorthand for what that team is called, but anyway, our the little Scooby. Well, and then you have the ultimate bully, which is the doctor at the absolutely at the lab. Although he was the one character. I guess they were trying to make him mysterious. I don't know, but I really wish they would have. I felt like they did a very good job, more or less, of giving a lot of character depth. I never really felt much more than him, other than like he's a mad scientist. Like, I didn't think there was a lot of depth there, and I was a little disappointed in that. That's like, if I were damn evil. I mean, it's hard. You really do wish you could figure out what exactly is so worth it to him that he's willing to be this bad. I wish they had done like an episode, like the episode of the X-Files, where they go back and give you all the information on Cancer Man, and you learn that Cancer Man is trying to write a spy novel and all this crazy stuff, but it suddenly humanizes this character that previously has just been, one-dimensionally evil. And to me, they could have explored more than that. Personally, I didn't need more. He's definitely, through the magazine art clippings and various newspaper articles and stuff, we get the impression. This is a man who is not above. He's just truly like, I'm going to do this maybe for my country, but mostly out of pure arrogance. And, he is all. He's willing to do MK Ultra stuff because he wants to be. They do talk about a little bit of it. He always was about himself. This is a man who's truly only about himself and how he can You know, because he's going to turn his own daughter over to the government when she can kill people. You know, he may be her
Do you think she's actually his daughter, or just
No. I mean, it's
does she just call him Papa?
No. It's his daughter because he had her with what's her face.
But how do you know that?
That never dawned on me, but I totally buy it.
I just thought of him as like an adopted daughter. I just thought of him as an adopted daughter.
I just don't know if it's the case or not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Regardless, Tony's got it right. That he totally intends to use her as a weapon, and that's the most important thing that she is. He is.
Because each experiment leading up to that was the most important thing. This is like a Jim Jones funded by the government.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just would have liked a little more. If that's the only criticism, if this is the only criticism I can really toss out there, that's pretty minor, because like it didn't detract my enjoyment while I was watching it. It's just like, now that I'm reflecting on it, I think he was a little bland, and they could have done a little more there. But that's just me, obviously. You know, like Tony, you don't feel that way, so that's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that this is also another lift from Stephen King. In this case, The Mist, because this is in The Mist. What happened was the guys up at the lab outside of this funky little Stephen King town have been doing whatever they do. Yeah, and they accidentally opened up a rift into this other world, and critters have come out of it.
Right.
That's exactly what's going on here, except for that luckily there's only one critter.
Well, and he's only and you have to go to his world. Although he does come out.
No,
Here's the thing. No, he comes out. Well, one thing I was going to say real quick about what we were talking about a second ago is I don't think he's like Jim Jones. I think he's like Joseph Mengele. I mean, he's doing like torture.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, he's X-Filey, basically.
I guess I was mainly talking about his extreme personality / manipulation / extreme arrogance and self-centeredness.
Yeah.
Which is horrific.
Right.
I mean, truly horrific. The way he treats the little girl, it is astonishing. And I wish, and we should skip straight to the ending, and then we'll get final thoughts, and God knows we can go.
I want to talk about the monster.
The monster, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I want to talk about the monster as well. I thought that how they revealed the monster little by little was awesome. Like, you just kind of, at first, it's just a flash, and you don't know what it is, and then you're kind of like, I was actually trying to pause it to see his face, and then eventually you can see him, and he's actually a pretty great looking monster. The only thing I don't like about the monster is he's inconsistent in that he lives in another dimension. So theoretically, he should be able to kind of just go through the walls, Kitty Pryde style, but instead he's very physical. Like, he has to physically go through the walls, and he physically can be trapped, and he physically can be injured. And so that I kind of found, I would have preferred for him to be more Freddy Krueger-ish, you know, where he just kind of magically can go back and forth, and he has to be killed with magic. But that's the only complaint I had about that.
I think, you know, that naturally he does not travel in between dimensions. I think that's something that happened, you know, when this experiment kind of unglued the upside down, as I called it, into this town. You know, I don't think, you know, so I think it being physical is fine, because I think in its own, I kind of wonder if like something happened, because again, it's like a hell version of this other of the town. I kind of wonder if like something just happened to that alternate Earth, and now like this creature, that's what's left of humanity. Like because it's like humanoid. That. It's humanoid, and again, it's very reminiscent of. You know, it kind of looks like if Audrey 2 and the Thing had a baby. Yeah. You know,
I love your Planet of the Apes perspective. That's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, you know, you have to wonder. You know, like you know, it's the same town. It's just everything's been decimated, and there's all this like ash in the air, and it's and then you know we have this creature. We don't really see anything else, but there could be more of them. And, you know, maybe it's some sort of Fallout mutant. We don't know. I don't think it, you know, is naturally, you know, this teleporter. You know, I think that's just sort of what happened to it. I mean, At most, I kind of wish maybe they could have made it a little bit more like Slimer, where it kind of oods through the walls. Maybe that would have been a happy medium. But I really get the sense that, you know, the two worlds bleeding together, that's not a side effect of the creature. You know, like that's not something the creature could do normally. That's something that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, also, I think there are different ones, because there's ones that kind of, there's whatever creature is feeding into them alien style, and then I almost thought that the one that got Barb was a really gigantic creature in the way that they shot it.
Yeah. Well, when this
may or may not be true.
Long, my question is, so this creature lives in the Veil of Shadows, and here's my question: what is the Veil of Shadows? Is Silent Hill the same thing? And is this a universe with only two realms, the light world and this dark world, or are there many realms and somehow?
Well, they talk about many Earths theory actually on the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, this is the '80s, so this is right around the time where Crisis on Infinite Earths was coming out.
This doesn't seem like a. I don't. This does not seem like just a toxic nuclear Earth. This seems like a hell dimension. Like a weird,
it's upside down. Like,
well, I was just thinking that maybe it's a nuclear Earth because of all the ash. Like, that just made me think maybe it's a nuclear winter. I don't know. You know, like
it's a spiritual negative.
Well, also it does a really good. It's a really good way of showing you're not in the realm that you know. Because they can put ash up anywhere, and then like, oh, okay, well that's where they're at.
Well, it's a good point. When you think about like the last
cue that
of
it's
Lost,
easy to do.
In Lost, they were constantly moving between these two universes, but they had no visual vocabulary to show when you were with one and when you were with the other. You had to watch the haircuts of the characters, and that came to be sort of tiresome. Going, oh my God, I can't remember which universe am I in right now. That was kind of a bummer. If they had ashes falling all over in one of them, that actually would have been pretty great.
The monster, the design of the monster, though, is so perfectly, you know, again, you know, it could be Little Shop of Horrors, The Thing, From Beyond. Like, it has this, like, perfect 80s look to it. Like, it even though it was not created in that era, it does look like something that a special effects team from that time period would design.
Although it does have some touchstones to some creatures in Resident Evil, the games. Maybe not so much the movies.
I'm not a video game guy, so that would not be my, like, that's not really a place that my mind will usually go.
No,
so,
but it does have touchstones to that. And
I believe
Silent Hill's a thing, you know, as well. Although, you know, we talked about moving on. I wish we talked more about Jim Hopper, the sheriff, as well, who's great.
Go crazy.
Yeah.
Look, anything you guys want to talk about?
I like his arc as well, because he starts out, you know, also a very troubled guy. It takes, you know, he's lost his daughter, and he does cares intensely about finding the kid, but also is, you know, fairly practical about it. And in a very Stephen King manner, eventually goes, wait, you know what? Crazy person is not so crazy. Let's take on the government. And those kind of turns definitely are very Stephen King. Like,
yes,
the long-suffering sheriff who is like, you're crazy, woman. I'm a practical guy working for the government, the local government. Oh crap! This is something I should worry about. And his redemption and everything like that. Like, I really like his character a lot.
He is a good character. He's a lovable sheriff, which is hard to do. You know,
especially in this day and age.
A lovable, chain-smoking, drinking, semi-violent sheriff. And sometimes he looks so sweaty and like he hasn't changed in days that you can just see how this man must smell when he comes to the door. You know, after he's been like laying on his couch, you know, smoking multiple packs of Camels and like drinking for days.
And you know, according to the IMDb, he's wearing the exact same uniform as they wear in Jaws, and include up down to the Amity Island triangle-shaped patch, which makes me laugh.
No way.
But
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed him. I think he's very, very just sweet and earnest, and I don't know. I thought he was a great addition. I love his Indiana Jones, rescue on the bus and the whole thing with where the kids are on the bus.
Yeah.
He's great. He's brave. He's got the daughter that died, and so he's got all these.
He made me all that stuff made me very sad. Like I have to say, I find him to be a profoundly sad character. Like,
sure, he's tragic.
Definitely.
Yeah. What happens at the end to the sheriff? Because at the end we see Winona Ryder is having dinner with her family. I can't remember what happens to the sheriff.
Well,
he comes back. He's back at the station.
The government
he
picks him up and talks to him about something, but we never learn what it is.
Oh, right. That's probably going to find. Oh, yeah. We need to talk about how it ends too. But yeah, that's probably going to be something next year, next season.
And he believes that 11 is still out there because he's putting food in the box.
Oh,
Eggo waffles too.
Yeah.
She loves Eggo
well, the question
waffles.
is, do they go away? I mean, if so, then she is out there.
We'll
that was
out.
an interesting little because we just see her get sucked up into the other dimension. We don't see her body or anything. So she may very well be out there, and which means that somebody. And then, of course, the kid is still having. Will is still having. He still has like weird baby whatever that snake thing was that was in him.
It's the slug from Night of
out.
the Creeps, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. And then he's got these weird moments where he suddenly is in the other dimension for a second, and then flashes back. So I think that Will's going to have to go in after her. Like he's probably going to see her or something. I don't know, somehow.
I absolutely think that they will rescue this character. The character's too lovable and fun, and the show has too much of a heart of gold. So definitely, the character will be back. I mean, I think, no doubt about it. And like it's a second part of this story. She does appear to sacrifice herself, but we know already that these characters can move back and forth between dimensions. So, I mean, there's literally no doubt in my mind, any more than that Superman will be back, that Elle will be back. Absolutely. She's got to come back for more Eggo waffles in the same way that, that E.T. loved his Reese's Pieces. She's got her thing.
I hope Eggo appreciates the product placement. Maybe they were in bed with Stranger Things, but it did make me want waffles.
Yeah.
Me too. I actually ate waffles for dinner that night. The first time they were doing it, I was like, I'm going to have waffles for dinner.
I'm more of a pancake guy, I tell you the truth, but, sometimes you just got to eat some waffles.
But she likes these frozen waffles, and that's delightful. It makes her, it's yet another thing that brings us closer to her. Okay, so is there anything else that we want to touch on before we hit our final thoughts?
We could spend 3 hours talking about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Given that
there's a lot of it.
Given that we spent 8 hours watching it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We could have done a single episode for each episode.
Or at least a couple, 3.
Yeah. Well, most of the episodes were feature length. I mean, they're long. Like, they're like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Then let's do this. Let's get our final thoughts, and then we'll go around to talk about our endorsements. So I think, Julia, did we start with you or did we start with Tony?
Start with me.
Okay. So we'll go Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Julia, final thoughts for now, Stranger Things.
Well, I mean, I think we've at least I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say about it. Again, I think the performances are brilliant. I think the writing is brilliant. I think the sets are brilliant, and it's a really. I'm trying to find the word because it's not necessarily that it's heartwarming, but it's it tugs at your heartstrings. It turns on your heart light.
Right.
to do a really cheesy E.T. reference. But no, it's actually to be an E.T. reference. But yes, you're right. It does. It also ties in with Neil Diamond, who is Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so no, I thought it was a great way to spend 8 hours of my life.
Wonderful. Drew, final, or was it, no, Tony's next. I'm sorry. Tony, final thoughts, Stranger Things.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I'm sad that there's such a backlash now because it's so popular. People have to hate it to retain their street cred or whatever the hell they think they're going to retain by being contrarian and whatever. I would just wish more people could just like things and that was okay. But it really spoke to me in a lot of ways. It is a nostalgia bomb, but it's also got a lot of stuff that doesn't rely on nostalgia that I think makes it really solid. The score is great. It evokes Carpenter. Shout out to fellow Austinites who are doing cool stuff like this. Their music was used to kind of pitch the show, and then they got the gig. So as a musician, I think that's really awesome. Definitely taking a cue from that if I'm going to do some background stuff for things, because that's, Carpenter scores are things I really dig. I think it's great, and it lives up to the hype. That doesn't always happen. I can't speak. I've seen a lot of things where people are like, this is the best ever, and I watch it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Or if it doesn't speak to me, that's okay too. But I think in this case, it definitely lives up to everything I wanted it to be, everything I had hoped it was. So definitely I join the chorus of go see this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, lay it on us.
Well, I really liked it. Part of me, we keep talking about, the different influences. Part of me with the Carpenter influence kind of wishes there was not going to be another season. Wishes that had, like the unanswered questions would be just that, unanswered, and there would be that, there would be a story we would never see, and this was just a miniseries, and it was, because it does, if they had never done another season, it does complete its story arc better than a lot of other shows that have had seasons to wrap them up. Like this, there's a completeness to this, and I really did, appreciate that. The tidiness of the storytelling. That being said, I will definitely watch a second season. I greatly enjoyed this, and it's nice to know that there is. Look, I just had my heart broken when they canceled Penny Dreadful. It's nice to know that there is another genre show that I think that's in the same punching class. That just kind of, because like I talk about being a contrarian. I really like Game of Thrones, but I don't think it's the best thing in the world. And so, like this, probably my new favorite show now, because it's just so enjoyable in it that it does channel into so many things that I already enjoy.
Very good. I pretty much have nothing to add here other than definitely you should see it. I think it's and there's a hell of a lot of writing about the show right now, so you can kind of go all over the net and see different videos that show you side-by-side references. I made sure not to look at any of these things. I didn't read a single article about this until I watched it. So I'm assuming if you're listening to this, there's no way you would suffer through a whole episode of people talking about this without having seen it, but who knows? So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. But
well, some people don't mind spoilers.
Yeah. So let's talk about endorsements. Julia, we'll start with you. Do you have anything you want to recommend this week?
I have a lukewarm endorsement, which is that we watched Jason Bourne this weekend, and it was fun, and it was exactly what you expect it to be, because it was exactly like all the other three Jason Bourne movies, and there's a wonderful honest trailer that summarizes all the movies, and this one just fits right in with that perfectly. But I enjoyed it, and I've already forgotten pretty much the whole plot, because I don't think I actually absorbed it ever on any of them. However, it's a lot of fun, and boy, there's a real car chase that is like, I mean, my goodness, they went through a lot of damaged a heck of a lot of cars.
Yeah.
But that's, I think if you like just a good, solid action movie and you like the first 3 Bourne movies, then this one will be just fine.
Outstanding. Tony, what about you?
I have a few. I'm gonna say the young adult thing I was thinking about earlier was Anna to the Infinite Power. I definitely recommend the book and the movie if you can find it. I say you should go out and get a bunch of young adult novels like Girl with the Silver Eyes. If you like this, who cares if people are like, oh, that's young adult, whatever. That's an awesome book. Get a bunch of adaptations of movies that you liked. That was cool. Those are my recommendations. But also, you reminded me, so Shout Factory has Mr. Science Theater, and they just released The Slime People, which is an older one. And holy cow, The Mist is like the way, way, way better cousin to this movie, The Slime People. But it kind of covers some of the same things. And, it's not a great movie, but I recommend at least seeing the MST3K version of Slime People. And especially if you've seen The Mist and going, whoa, that The Mist could have been this. I'm glad it's not. So, yeah, those are mine. I'd say see that because the whole time I was like, wow, I don't know if this influenced The Mist, but, man, it's much better than Slime People, even though Slime People is actually enjoyable.
All right. That's a really good one. I will definitely check that out. Where did you watch that? You said that it was on
Shout Factory on my Roku, but it's free.
No, that's where it's at. Shout Factory app is
or you
free.
can just go to the web if if you don't have a Roku, like Shout Factory TV. I think it is lots of great stuff on there. But they release new Mystery Science Theater stuff every month or sometimes twice a month, and that's
we've been watching the shorts, the MST3K shorts on
there's so
the
much
Shout Factory app on the Roku.
Yeah. And but Slime People. If you like The Mist, you should check that out.
Excellent. Drew, what do you have to endorse for us this week?
Well, I had something planned out, but I think I'm gonna change that and get a more of a get up on my soapbox and give something for people to reflect on. I'm endorsing nostalgia because I after having this whole conversation and talking, some of the stuff we're talking about going in there, I think nostalgia gets a bad rap. I've been very nostalgic as of late, because of Ghostbusters, because of Stranger Things, and frankly, the world, we're living in a very chaotic time right now. It's an election year. It's one of the ugliest elections I think I have lived. It's definitely the ugliest election I've ever lived through. There's all sorts of craziness happening. There was just a shooting in downtown Austin. The world, it does feel like we're living in They Lived right now. Things are just bad. So nostalgia actually has the power to maybe get you to your happy place for a little bit, and I don't think that there is anything wrong with that. So if there's something that you can find out there that just makes you get to that good spot, that takes you back to being a little kid, I ask you to go do that this week because things are probably going to get worse before they get better. So take a moment. Do something, get in touch with your inner 10-year-old. That's perfectly fine. Nostalgia isn't bad. We shouldn't keep giving it a bad rap. Should it be everything? No. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong for things to make you feel nostalgic or for you to reflect on things that you liked when you were a kid.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I'm going to use my endorsement just to talk about the awesomeness that is coming up in the next couple of weeks. The Dallas Anime Fest, the Castle of Horror podcast is going to be there. Different members of the cast are going to be doing panels all weekend on the weekend of, I guess that's the 12th and 13th and 14th. And, of course, on Saturday night, we're actually going to be doing a live group podcast on Vampire Hunter D. So if you can get down to the Dallas Anime Fest for that weekend. We would absolutely love to see you. Of course, we will be recording and posting the show as our regular podcast. But yes, you must be there. We will be talking about Vampire Hunter D live, and it will be awesome. So that is all I have. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I'm really glad that we did this episode. It was kind of unusual to do like a brand new miniseries that's showing right now. If you are listening and you have comments or you think that we missed something super important, which I guarantee you we have because this thing is way long, just come onto the Facebook page and tell us about it. And I won't even suggest my usual spiel about kidnapping your friends and forcing them to listen to this show. Instead, you should just implore them to listen to the angels of their better natures and listen to the show and be happy thereby. Have a fantastic week. We can't wait to hear from you again and talk next week. And I think it's Waxwork next week, so it's going to be fun. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Night.
Night.
Good night.